Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to plunge into some pretty dense topics, pull out the key insights, and basically give you a shortcut to being really informed.
That's the goal.
So today we're tackling something complex, definitely sensitive, the U.S. Family Court and child welfare systems.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Our main source material is this proposed bill called the Family Justice and Accountability Act 2025. It's authored by Francesca Amato.
And it's not just theory, right? It draws on, what, over 17 years of advocacy?
Exactly, advocacy and firsthand experience.
Hmm.
And it's really aimed at addressing what the author sees as deep systemic failures in these systems.
Okay.
So our mission today is to kind of unpack this thing. It's a detailed document, and we want to distill what it's really saying, what its implications might be.
Make it understandable.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this.
Sounds good.
So the bill kicks off by pointing out this really stark contrast. It says family courts were supposed to be, compassionate, rehabilitative, child-centered.
The ideal picture.
Yeah, always putting the best interests of children first. That sounds, well, good.
It does, but then the bill immediately flips to what it calls the reality. It claims that, in practice, these courts have repeatedly and systemically failed to do that.
Fail how?
Well, it goes further. It argues they've actually become, and this is a direct quote, engines of trauma, injustice, and state-sponsored family destruction.
Wow. Okay. That's incredibly strong language. How does the bill, back that up? What specific systemic failures does it actually point to?
It lays out a few key things. First, a major lack of transparency and public oversight. Court proceedings are often sealed, right?
Oh.
And the bill claims this leads to unchecked judicial discretion. Basically, judges doing whatever they want without scrutiny.
And potential rights violations.
Exactly. Violations of constitutional rights, civil rights, and it specifically calls out the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA.
Okay. Transparency's one. What else?
Second, it talks about perverse economic motivations. This is pretty controversial.
How so?
It alleges that federal money, especially from Title IV of the Social Security Act.
That's the funding for state child welfare.
Right. That funding, plus laws like ASFA, the Adoption and Safe Families Act from '97.
Which speeds up terminating parental rights.
Yes. The bill claims these things actually create incentives to separate children from perfectly fit, loving parents.
Incentives for separation. That's counterintuitive.
It's a central argument in the bill.
Yeah.
And there's a third finding that's really concerning.
Go on.
It asserts that protective parents, especially mothers, often get penalized. They're called uncooperative or alienating if they report abuse.
While the alleged abuser might get custody.
Or unsupervised visits, yeah, that's the claim. Abusers rewarded, protective parents punished.
Okay, this is getting really interesting and pretty disturbing. What about Child Protective Services, CPS? The bill singles them out too, right?
It does. The findings there are just as critical. It alleges CPS frequently leaves children in abusive environments,
So failing to protect.
while also unjustly removing children from fit homes. So errors in both directions, basically.
Which just makes things worse.
According to the bill, yes. Exacerbating harm and perpetuating systemic failures. It argues the agencies meant to help are part of the problem.
Does it offer any evidence for that?
It cites quite a bit of social science research. Things like the Adverse Childhood Experiences, ACEs, studies, Saunders-Myers. Research showing that separating kids from their main caregivers causes severe and long-lasting trauma.
Okay, so that paints a picture of the problems the bill identifies.
Hmm.
Let's shift to the solutions. How does it propose fixing this? Immunity seems like a big one.
A huge one. The bill flat out argues judicial immunity is not found in the U.S. Constitution.
Not in the Constitution.
Nope. It says immunity was basically created by the courts themselves through case law. It points to Bradley v. Fisher, 1872.
And the effect is?
That it puts judges above the law, essentially. That's the bill's interpretation.
So what's the fix?
Simple, according to the bill. Eliminate it. Get rid of immunity for judges, attorneys, CPS workers, and court-appointed professionals.
Meaning they could actually be sued or prosecuted.
Right, for legal violations. Civil liability, criminal liability, it makes them personally accountable in a way they really aren't now.
What kind of penalties are we talking about? Jail time, fines, losing their jobs?
All of the above, potentially. The bill mentions criminal prosecution, including imprisonment if harm occurs, civil liability so families can sue for damages, and yes, termination.
And who exactly does this apply to? Just judges and lawyers?
No, it casts a really wide net. It says all individuals, agencies, and entities involved in removal, custody, foster care, adoption, public or private.
So everyone.
Pretty much. They shall be subject to full civil and criminal liability for harm or rights violations. It even includes foster parents, adoptive parents, and healthcare professionals if they knowingly contribute to wrongful removal or concealment.
Okay. Let's talk about law enforcement. Their motto is usually to protect and serve. How does the bill view their role in all this?
Well, the bill finds that police have increasingly become just agents of court orders participating in removals.
Even if the orders might be slawed.
That's the implication. It says they often participate in the unlawful seizure of children and explicitly states officers are not immune from liability when they act outside of constitutional bounds or fail to intervene against known harm.
Wow. It even uses the phrase child trafficking pipelines in relation to their role.
It does. It suggests that by enforcing certain orders without sufficient scrutiny, they can inadvertently aid these alleged pipelines.
So what does this all mean for a police officer on the ground, if this passed?
Big changes. They'd have to verify orders are actually legal and constitutional first. Is there a proper warrant? Was due process followed? Is there ADA accommodation? Is there really clear and present danger with actual evidence?
That's a lot more responsibility.
It is. And mandatory annual training to constitutional law, ADA, trauma-informed practices, whistleblower protections.
And that old line, I was just doing my job.
The bill says that shall no longer shield misconduct. Pretty direct.
Okay, accountability for individuals is clear. What about system-wide transparency beyond just law enforcement?
Yeah, the bill pushes hard on that. It mandates body cameras and public record access for basically all family court and child welfare personnel.
So everything's recorded and potentially public.
That's the idea. And it has this thing called the gold standard of transparency. Officials have to use their real, full legal names, no aliases, public disclosure of all identities used.
No hiding behind initials or anything.
Right, full identification.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. People often complain about the Department of Justice, the DOJ, saying they lack resources to investigate complaints like civil rights issues. Does the bill address that?
Oh, absolutely. It calls that response essentially an excuse. It declares the DOJ's failure to investigate complaints, ADA, civil rights, constitutional violations in family courts is a direct failure to uphold the laws they are mandated to enforce.
Strong words for the DOJ. Does it propose consequences?
It does. Things like congressional oversight hearings, civil penalties against the department, and significantly, it grants citizen and advocate standing.
Meaning regular people could sue the DOJ.
To compel them to act, yes. To force an investigation into alleged misconduct within the family court system.
Okay, let's talk about restitution. Making things right for families who the bill says were harmed, it mentions really devastating outcomes.
Yeah, it finds that decades of misapplication of family court discretion have led to catastrophic harm. It lists things like physical and sexual abuse, wrongful separation, suicides, and deaths of children. Just awful alleged consequences.
Truly heartbreaking. So what does the bill propose for compensation?
Substantial financial compensation. Compensatory damages covering emotional pain, physical harm, lost family connection, even lost education and job opportunities.
And for the kids specifically.
It mandates fully funded college or vocational education for children who were wrongfully removed or harmed. A chance to rebuild, maybe?
And I noticed something about the statute of limitations.
Right. No statute of limitations for child sexual abuse claims, or in cases where there were coercion or gag orders preventing people from speaking out.
That acknowledges how long it can take for trauma to surface or for people to feel safe reporting.
Exactly. And speaking of things that silence victims, the bill takes a really strong stance against parental alienation syndrome, PAS.
Oh, PAS. That's a controversial one. What's the bill's take?
It calls PAS and similar concepts debunked theories. It claims they're used specifically to discredit abuse disclosures made by children or protective parents.
And it connects this to custody outcomes.
Directly. It alleges these theories lead to wrongful custody reversals in over 58,000 cases annually in the U.S., often putting kids, it says, at serious risk.
So what does the bill propose regarding PAS? Ban it.
It mandates that courts cannot rely on PAS or similar theories unless there's clear and convincing evidence of actual intentional harm or coaching by the parent. It's a much higher bar.
That seems like a major shift. What about the broader view of children's rights in the bill?
It's quite explicit. It affirms children are legal persons, not property. They have independent rights, especially to safety and stability.
Not property. That's significant phrasing.
It is. And it makes a crucial distinction about neglect. It says neglect, if it's unintentional or related to circumstances like poverty, shall not serve as lawful grounds for child removal.
So poverty alone isn't grounds for removal.
Not according to this bill, only substantiated abuse proven with clear and convincing evidence should warrant taking a child. That redefines the threshold for state intervention significantly.
And the bill links forced separation directly to health outcomes, right? Citing research.
It does, very directly. It says forced separation from a biological parent causes significant and well-documented trauma. It compares PTSD rates in these kids to combat veterans.
Combat veterans, that's
Yeah.
staggering.
Yeah. And it links this trauma to long-term developmental harm, disrupted attachment, depression, suicidal ideation. Very serious consequences.
And it mentions foster care statistics, too.
Right. That more than 80% of foster children suffer from a significant mental health issue, which qualifies them as disabled under the ADA.
80%.
And also that they're over 7x more likely to be sexually abused in foster care compared to the general population. Grim statistics used to bolster the argument against unnecessary removal.
What's fascinating here is the connection the bill makes between that trauma, disability, and the ADA and family court. Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure, so the trauma itself can cause disabilities, right? Mental health issues, PTSD. The bill emphasizes that family courts must comply with the ADA for these children and also for disabled parents or caregivers.
How does that play out practically?
It says removing a disabled child from their main caregiver is strictly prohibited unless every reasonable modification, accommodation, and support service has been tried first, identified, offered, and exhausted.
So keep the child home with support, if at all possible.
Exactly. It cites the Olmsted Supreme Court decision about providing services in the most integrated setting. Here, that means keeping disabled kids with their families whenever feasible.
Okay, beyond individual rights and definitions, are there changes to how the courts actually operate, the procedures?
Yes, a couple of really big ones. First, the reinstatement of jury trials in family court matters involving the loss of custodial rights.
Jury trials. In family court.
For cases where a parent could lose custody, yes. A jury of peers making that decision, not just a judge. That's a fundamental change.
Huge. What else?
The creation of independent family justice oversight committees. These would include civilian members, providing outside accountability for the courts and agencies.
So, more eyes on the system. Are there other major reforms we should touch on? It seems like a really comprehensive bill.
It really is. There are several more significant pieces.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, it calls for the full repeal of the Adoption and Safe Families Act of 1997, ASFA.
We mentioned that earlier. Why repeal it entirely?
The bill argues ASFA leads to unjust and premature termination of parental rights and has basically created a profit-driven child welfare industry. So get rid of the financial driver is the idea.
Okay, what's next?
Then there's the abolition of foreign legal influence, specifically mentioning the BIR, the British Accreditation Registry.
The Bar Association. What's the issue there?
The bill asserts the practice of law is a right of the people, not something controlled by a, quote, foreign or private registry. It cites an old case, Sims v. Aarons, saying law is an occupation of common right. It's arguing against the bar's authority over lawyers in the U.S.
That's quite a fundamental challenge to the legal profession structure.
It is indeed. Then there's the prohibition of bonding and commodification of families.
Bonding, like financial bonds.
Sort of. This part is very specific. The bill alleges children's placements are sometimes assigned CUSIP numbers identifiers usually used for financial securities.
Wait, treating kids like stocks?
That's the provocative claim.
Yeah.
That it turns kids into commodities. The bill wants to ban any financial instruments tied to custody outcomes, calling it akin to human trafficking or racketeering under auto laws. No CUSIP numbers for kids.
Okay, that's a very specific and serious allegation. Anything else?
Yes. Elimination of anonymous reporting to CPS. Reports would need full identification, signed under penalty of perjury.
Why?
To deter false or malicious reports, the bill argues. Increase accountability for those making accusations.
Makes sense. And one more.
Finally, the prohibition of unconstitutional gag orders. These are orders that stop parents from speaking publicly about their cases.
Which happens quite often.
Yes. The bill calls these gag orders a First Amendment violation and a form of psychological, emotional, and reputational abuse. It wants to ban them.
So looking at this whole thing, It's striking how often the bill says it's not a new law. It keeps saying it's just about enforcing the laws we already have, fighting for rights we already have.
Exactly. That's the philosophical underpinning. The argument isn't necessarily for new rights, but for the system to actually respect and uphold the existing constitutional and human rights of children and parents.
The claim is the system has drifted away from those fundamental principles.
Precisely. And this bill is presented as the way to force it back into alignment.
Well, we've certainly taken a deep dive into this proposed Family Justice and Accountability Act. It is incredibly comprehensive. I mean, from getting rid of immunity for judges and officials.
Right, to totally restructuring child welfare funding.
And changing court procedures,
Right.
redefining rights. It touches everything.
Yeah. And I think what's really at the core, as the bill itself puts it, is trying to build a system that values truth, transparency, disability accommodation, and human dignity.
And its stated goal is pretty ambitious,
Yeah.
ending what it calls state-sanctioned trauma.
A massive goal, yeah. Whether it could achieve that is another question, but that's the vision.
It is. So for you listening, here's something to think about, a final thought. What would the world of family courts and child welfare look like if these kinds of sweeping changes, all framed as enforcing existing rights, were actually put into practice?
Wow.
How might that really shift the power dynamics, for kids and parents all across the country?